8th session, we're honored to hear from General Jim Rainey, Commander of Army Futures Command, as he discusses the critical role of AI and software-driven innovation in shaping military strategy and operations with Insight Partners Senior Advisor Nick Sinai. Please welcome General Rainey and Nick to the stage.
You, baby, you're the logic to my maybe. Don't replace me, just embrace me. You need my touch, I need your efficiency. We're making magic, me and you.
All right. How's everyone doing?
Great.
All right. I am fired up. This is a tremendous honor. Thank you, General Rainey, for coming and spending time with folks in the room and folks online. Just a little bit of quick background. General Rainey, a 4-star general. I think there's less than a dozen in the Army. He's commanded at every level from platoon to division, served in numerous combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, 2 master's degrees, including military affairs and public administration, 30,000 soldiers and civilians across over 100 locations globally. Really excited to have General Rainey here. So, General, thank you.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks, everybody. I appreciate you being here.
So maybe we could start, tell us a little bit about Army Futures Command.
Yeah, so, I don't know how experienced the crowd is dealing with the Department of Defense, but it's a big, giant organization. I think it's the best, keeping America free, but we could always do better. The Army is different in a couple ways. The organization I have the privilege of leading, Army Futures Command, is unique. We're the only service that dedicated a 4-star major command to transforming the Army. Think the nexus of technology and national security. That's kind of what the 29,000 or so of us do every single day, and that's the only thing I do. We're in Austin, Texas, so not in the Beltway, not on a big giant Army base. You got to get strip search to come visit us. We're right down in the middle of downtown Austin. If anybody, open invitation, if anybody's coming, come see us. They put it there for the obvious reasons. We solve problems in AFC from the bottom up. So we don't look at a problem and start OSD down. We start at the individual soldier and work our way up. And one thing that's unique in terms of the tech space is we do our stuff out in the dirt, out in the ground. So a lot of things work in labs, PowerPoint, AI. Can you do it in the dirt, in the rain, in the jungle, in the desert, in a heavily contested, degraded, space disrupted EW environment? And so those are some of the uses of us that are different, I think.
Excellent. Now, why does the Army need to change? What are we trying to change?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons, but so to state the obvious, probably the most dangerous period of time in terms of national security that I certainly can remember in my lifetime since World War II, right? Everything you read about China is as bad as people are saying it is, maybe even worse. There's a war in Europe. The Middle East is tinderbox. Iran is a real problem. North Korea is a problem. Violent extremism didn't go away when we disengaged from Afghanistan. That's a problem. And as Secretary Gates famously said, the most likely thing's the one you're not thinking about. So there's at least six reasons we ought to be paying attention to national security. At the same time, unprecedented in terms of the disruption in the tech space. Last time it was this crazy, it was pre-World War II. People were inventing things like airplanes, radios, and tanks. And even then, you just had to figure it out once and kind of, okay, I got it. Now, as several panelists have pointed out, it's obvious to you all, even if you had it figured out today, 90 days from now, you're going to have to figure it out. So dangerous world, crazy amount of tech disruption, and bringing that to bear to make sure we have the most dominant military in the world. And let me be clear, not to fight a war, okay? No one hates war more than the people who got to go do it. This is about deterring our enemies and making sure they believe that it would be a mistake to use force to impose their will or their objectives on the United States.
So let's talk tech. This is an AI conference.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got a lot of thoughts on.
I'm a lot better at the national security stuff than the tech stuff, but I'll try not to disappoint you.
Yeah, so how are you thinking about AI?
Yeah, so kind of in 3 periods of time, and truth in advertising, I have incredibly talented, credentialed scientists and people who work for me. I am not one of them. I'm an infantry officer by trade. I was doing great at math as a kid till they started putting letters in there, and it kind of came off the rails for me. I went with liberal arts and worked out okay. But you can hire tech guys, right? So, anyways, I lost my train of thought there for a second.
AI.
Yeah. So, near term, so 3 periods of time, and you can put a couple years on each one generally. In the near term, right now, and several people have brought it up, we got to be taking advantage of what's doable today. Our quest for the aspirational sometimes blinds us to what's absolutely doable. The amount of information that is knowable to military leaders and knowable and unknown is embarrassing. So help us bring to bear AI, large language models, so that we know what can be known. When I went to Afghanistan, somebody handed me a 400-page book and said, here's everything you need to know about Afghanistan, right? We can do a lot better than that. The science of military radars, weather, terrain, ballistics, trajectory, we could bring that all rapidly to bear and make our men and women a lot more successful. A little bit further out, and another panelist brought it up, we currently have a big problem in the military with the state of our data, mainly because we didn't know how important it was as we were building this. So we've got a lot of our data is locked up in proprietary systems. It's in disparate locations. It's not organized properly. So we have several efforts going on to rapidly bring our data into a state of being that's both usable and accessible, so that we will be able to take advantage of all the breakthroughs and technology that's happening in large language models, machine learning, maybe quantum sensing we think's a thing, but maybe bigger applications of quantum would almost be useless to us right now because we haven't organized our data and got it in a usable state. And then the really big one that I think is really going to be revolutionary is the nexus of humans and machines. So figuring out how to optimize the integration of humans and machines. So it's a tech, it's a big, autonomy is kind of the center of gravity of that problem, but not to replace humans with robots. But like Allie said this morning, I was so glad to hear her talk about people. Our real superpower in the United States military and the Army is the men and women who volunteer to serve, and preserving that advantage. So how do we offload risk onto machines, unmanned, manned, ground, air robots, at the same time optimizing our humans for the things that humans are always going to do? And I'm nervous to say this in a crowd. I think there's some things that computers will never replace humans at. Free will, curiosity, instincts, the ethical application of violence that folks like me pride ourselves. That's what makes the United States military different. We don't indiscriminately kill innocent people. So the human-machine integration in a way that optimizes both of those and takes advantage of all the technological and innovative advantages we have as Americans.
Let's just double click on some of the people here. I mean, there's 1.2 million soldiers in active duty, reserve, and guard with tremendous talent. And you guys are both teaching soldiers to code and doing some fancy data science. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so 1.2 million men and women in your Army, in the United States Army. We work for the taxpayer and the other services, so 2.5 million total, but one Army is by far the biggest service. Well, we have a clear recognition that we need to upskill and new skill our workforce. As great as our soldiers are at using their weapons and being physical fit and technology, we got to upskill. So we think that's in the neighborhood of 50 to 100,000 of our current employees soldiers really. Need to add skills. We don't have that figured out yet, but to get started, we have two programs kind of attacking that problem from both ends. So we went out before we started buying coders or contracting for coders, we had a hypothesis that 1.2 million people, there's probably some people, even though they don't have the diploma or the education, they know how to code. And we started that program. We get 3,000 qualified applicants for 30 slots every 6 months, run a 2-year program, partnered with industry and academia down there in Austin. So somebody joins the Army to be a cook, a medic, an infantryman. We find out that she's phenomenally talented at coding. We have a ability to rapidly adopt that. It's pretty cool and innovative. Kind of doesn't sound like something you'd expect from the big giant Army. And then on the other end, we partnered with Carnegie Mellon and a couple other universities where we take about that top 0.5% of the men and women who come in the Army, think Ivy League, West Point, computer science degrees, Rhodes Scholar type kind of people. And then they have to get into Carnegie Mellon's grad school. If they do that, they go to school for 2 years and they stay there for 2 more years, work on projects. So we're building data scientists, computer engineers that we think can compete with anybody, even your best folks. We don't need all your people, but we got to have user representatives as we interact with the best tech companies. So those are 2 examples of some innovative stuff we're doing in Army Futures Command.
Maybe just picking up on that, engaging with commercial companies. I think one of the things that distinguishes Army Futures Command is the openness to engage with non-traditional and traditional defense tech companies, commercial companies, really all of industry, kind of some of the best of American innovation. Can you talk a little bit more about how you do that?
Yeah, so the great thing about the ethical, so I'm, as a commissioned officer, accountable to civilian control of the military, which is a good thing. I have some ethical, would say constraints, but they're actually the right thing to do. But there's really only 2 ways you can approach the ethical aspect of my job, and that is either talk to no one or talk to everyone. So guys get in trouble when they talk to this company and not that company. So I say that to say I engage anybody that's willing to talk. I'm here today, hoping to be the best panelist, but what I'm really here for is to meet folks. Allie kind of knocked me off the top there at the beginning, but I hope to meet people, network, engage people. We don't know what we don't know. We have requirements, we have problem statements that are out that we're asking for help with. Flagging good companies that are doing innovative things is very interesting to me. I don't do as much in the venture equity stuff, but the amount of S&T dollars in the Army is dwarfed by the amount of IRAD dollars, which is dwarfed by the amount of venture capital dollars, and that is a superpower in America. There's a reason we have the best tech of anybody. It's capitalism and innovation, things like that. So I say all that to say, if you're in Austin, we've got tons of people in Warren, Michigan, Huntsville, Alabama, Aberdeen, Maryland. Got a major office in the Beltway. So if anybody's interested in following up with Army Futures Command, I'd be glad to either have some of my folks, if it's a real technical topic, or if you just want to talk, I'm always available.
So part of the mission is combat, but Army is also this massive enterprise, and we have mostly enterprise leaders and technologists in the room. How do you think about modernizing something as old as the Department of the Army?
Yeah. Well, we are the world's best military. We're also the world's best bureaucracy. It's daunting. I think I was telling somebody, that if you think about executive leadership, strategic leadership, that there's the no kidding, you got to be a good leader, you got to be thoughtful, you got to be visionary, you got to be able to communicate. I think the real skill that's the most valuable for senior folks in the department, and probably in civilian world too, is the ability to drive change. Not lead it, not manage it, you got to drive it. The bureaucracy behaves the way it was built to behave. People are surprised, the government's a bureaucracy. Yeah, exactly, that's the way they built it that way. And in fairness, we spend $1 trillion of your money a year. So some oversight and deliberateness to that is probably a good thing. But we got to get faster. We have a 7-year budgeting cycle. It's ridiculous. I mean, you can't predict, so we got to, the money we are given, we need to be able to move it faster. We don't have a tech problem in America. We have a tech adoption problem in the military. There's no shortage of good technology that we should be able to acquire rapidly, legally, be accountable for how we spend your money. But that's a big part of my job.
How do we go faster?
Well, I think we got to take some more risk. I think we need to be better at holding people accountable. So aligning authorities and resources and accountability is something we're not great at in government. This person's got all the roles and responsibilities, and this person has the check, and this person gets to decide whether we did it, and nobody gets held accountable if it doesn't work. So I think it's finding people that are willing to take the accountability and empower them, giving them the decision-making, the resources to do that. I think I'm an optimist. The level of frustration at how slow we're going is getting ready to burst. I think I interact with a lot of members of Congress on both sides. They're very insistent on the military getting faster at adopting technology. Like I said, there's no shortage of the technology out there to be adopted. So,
how can everyone here help?
Well, I think. Let me say that I think that when you look at China, which is kind of the problem we're pacing against, although they're not the only problem, look at advantages we have over China. The first one is we have way better people in the military. We have an all-volunteer force. We have non-commissioned officers. We have officers, leaders, commanders. They got a lot more people, but quality, and that lets you do things that you can't do with a conscript army. But after people, the next biggest advantage we have over China is in the space you are all in. The innovation that's part of our culture. We're leading in every tech category. We have a huge advantage in artificial intelligence, although I don't want anybody resting, just keep working. We need to keep that. I think capitalism is part of it, a free market where people are incentivized to go out. So making sure we keep that advantage going forward is something that this crowd could do. I'd ask you all to be patient. Like I said, I know it's got to be frustrating working with the department, but it is the Constitution of the United States. It's 18 and 19-year-old men and women living or dying. If one of our enemies does decide to fight us, it's the future of all of our families and kids. So stick with us, keep pushing, keep flagging, keep talking to your congressman about why we're not going faster. I mean, that actually helps us. I'm not defensive about that in any way. If you go back to 1938, to use my pre-World War II analogy, the United States mobilized as a country, and that's really getting started. Roosevelt getting started in 38 is why we were able to outproduce airplanes, tanks. And if you look at that period of time, the companies that led that weren't big defense, nothing against primes, I love them all. They weren't the big defense primes. They were American companies, Ford Motor Company, RCA, General Mills. That American industrial base, God forbid, if we do have to defend our country again, we're going to need that. But this time around, I don't think it's going to be those big auto industries. I think it's going to be companies like the ones you represent, the new tech primes and small, innovative companies. And we got to bring our universities to bear and the excellence that resides there. So those kind of things, I think, are opportunities for people to contribute to national security without putting the uniform. And then the last thing I say every time I talk to crowds of successful and influential people, if you remember anything I said, inspire and hire. Inspire and hire. Inspire young men and women to serve. They don't have to serve in uniform. They teach public school, volunteer, but we got to keep young people. That's so much of our ethic as a country, that you do something with your life bigger than just you for other people. So inspire young people to serve. And if you ever get a chance to hire a vet or an Army spouse or an Army kid, you know, I'd ask you at least to give them an interview and take a little extra time if they don't deserve the job, to, you know, put a little energy into helping them next time around. But inspire and hire, and thank you all very much for your time. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, General Rainey.
First transistors paved the way, then circuit chips transformed the day. Push button phones, the signal clear.